Welcome back to the Too Much Hockey Podcast presented by Kentwood Ford. I'm your host, Joshua Marshall, and we're joined early this morning by a former head coach, a former president, and a former general manager, and an author. We'd like to welcome back Doug MacLean to the Too Much Podcast. Mac, how's it going? That's good. Yeah.
Heat it up a little bit. Starting to be some hockey talk coming along, which is good,
Yeah, no, I heard you were on 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon, so that was a good interview on Friday. I had a good laugh on a walk. I went for a nice little walk Friday night, and you got me laughing. So I like how you and Shanny go back and forth. But obviously, yeah, you guys had some good topics there, and we'll kind of cover some of those over here. But how's your guys' summer been? How's things going?
Really
with you?
good. We've had a fair amount of company, and actually we have company coming today from our friends from Massachusetts are coming today for a few days. So it's been good. It's been really good summer.
That's good. That's good to hear. All right, let's get down to it here, Mac. Obviously the biggest topic, Flames made some good news over the weekend. We'll get to that here in a second, but the topic of conversation around is the big news that what Connor McDavid's going to do here, and it's going to be really interesting in how it kind of shapes up. I don't know if you heard him speak on Friday when he met the media horde in Edmonton and talked about all options are on the table: 2 years, 4 years, 8 years, no term. And the word "no term" took a lot of liking maybe throughout other markets, but they don't seem too worried here in Edmonton. But do you think this gets done before October 8th and that's the opening night against the Calgary Flames here in Edmonton?
It's really tough to say. I read the Ryan Richard, interview, and it caught me a little off guard, looking after family security and, the right deal and right timing. It was just a little different. I think it created some questions, that whole interview. I don't know what he's done since, but look, you've got to be concerned. I think Jeff Jackson relationship with Connor, relationship with Judd, I got to believe that they've had lots of discussions as to where this is going to go. It's not going to be about money. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, look, Edmonton is everybody that's looking to sign as a free agent, the number one thing they look at is a chance to win. That's typically the number one thing. The number two thing is typically money, and the number three thing is location. So money is not going to be the challenge here. Chance to win is not going to be the challenge, because if McDavid's there, they definitely are a contender. They've shown that the last 2 years. I mean, they've come up short against a really good hockey team, that's maybe a little more mature than they are. And, I think not having Hyman was a part of it. Skinner's always a big question mark, but the kid is a battler, so we'll see where he ends up going. So, where else is he going to go that he has the opportunity to win and play with Draisaitl and the quality people there, and his relationship with Knobloch and with Jeff. Yeah. So I don't, I've got to believe they'll get the deal on it. Maybe 4 years, which is, to me, if you're Connor, a 4-year deal makes sense because you're still in your prime, and you can make a decision at that time where the Oilers are, where his career is. Does he want to have one last hurrah, and make a move to go someplace that looks like more of a contender? So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
But it's a distraction. It cannot be. I mean, it's all that Stan and Jeff and Knobloch are probably thinking about. Not Knobloch so much because he's got a coach, but I've got to believe it's a distraction. But that's normal, I mean, it'll be a distraction in Vegas when Eichel's up, It's always a distraction when your best player's up. It was a major distraction in Toronto this year with Marner all year. and when everybody was talking about it. So that's part of the business. Distractions are part of the job. And I can't, I think they'll work towards getting a deal done. And I said with John Shannon and Millard the other day, I'd be surprised if he doesn't sign in Edmonton. I really will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I think there's a lot of different factors as we see, and obviously at the end of the day, the only one that really probably knows what's going to do is the player himself and his family, and we all know that. Like that's not earth-shattering news as anyone listens to this.
The one thing, I don't know Connor McDavid. I met him years ago in a prospect game. All I know is when I watch him, there's no more determined player to win than this guy. Mm-hmm. There's no player in the league that's as focused on winning a championship for his team than this guy. He's right there with Sid. It's same mentality, and we look at what it took Sid a while to win, but that he's the same type of guy. So it's got to be a distraction because he's that important to a franchise, and everybody's known that since he was 17. Did we all think he'd be this good? I don't know. I never really thought much about it, but I know one thing: he's awful good. He's awful good and awful important to a franchise.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I know my co-host and I were talking yesterday, and he's like, "Is it bad leadership for it to be a distraction to go into the season?" So, and I don't know where you would come out on that, but
it's not bad leadership at all because it's a business.
Yeah.
It's a business. We all want to talk about hockey and everything, but the number one thing for the players, there's part. I mean, first of all, you can't be a superstar like Connor without loving the game, absolutely loving the game. And number two, his love to win is just about as strong. Mm-hmm. And so it's not his fault that, he wants to take his time. And like I say, I don't know him, but he looks like a very thoughtful type of kid and will think it out and his family are right there with him. So, I mean, I hope it works out for the Oilers. I really do.
Yeah. So, Mac, last week was a tough week for the Oilers too organization because one did an interview with Bob Stauffer and Derek Ryan, who announced his retirement from the NHL, and then obviously Dylan Holloway was on the Cam and Strick podcast, and that interview came out first, and he talked about how the organization didn't make him feel like he was worthy of the offer that he thought he should garnish in his negotiations before the offer sheet happened. And then Derek Ryan went out of his way unsolicited to call out the coach and to call out Jeff Jackson and Stan Bowman. And while Bob Stauffer was trying to cut him off, Derek Ryan made sure to finish what he had to say it, and pretty much talking about he spent 9 straight years in the NHL. The NHL usually ends up telling you when you're done, not the opposite way. And he felt that, pretty much, and he obviously gave a lot of flowers to Kenny Holland. And he just said this wouldn't have happened under Kenny Holland's regime. It all changed under this new management. So do you think a big part of...
So what happened? What did Ryan expect?
Yeah, so Ryan was upset. Derek Ryan was upset because at the point of his career, obviously he has 2 kids. They're in school. They're in activities here in Edmonton. It's no secret that the Oilers organization is obviously in Edmonton. Their farm team is in California. So It's quite the hike to get from there to there. In 2 different times he was sent up, sent down, sent up, sent down. Yeah. But he talked about the lack of communication, the lack of respect, and the lack of trust between the new head coach and Jeff Jackson and Stan Bowman. So, he just felt that what he's been able to do for the 4 years being with this Oilers team, and that was the longest he's ever been with one organization. He had brief stints in Carolina and same with Calgary, but he spent a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears, and that's exactly kind of his words. Just wasn't treated. Now, I understand it's a business at the end of the day, and he said you'd have to be a professional. You got to handle it in different ways. But when he announced his retirement, we've been able to see over Instagram the overwhelming support from the players that played with him in this Oilers organization. He obviously was a very well-liked guy, but do you think things like that changed when the direction and maybe where this – I just feel like in my personal opinion, if Kenny Holland's the general manager, this isn't an issue. I think
Yeah.
Connor's already resigned. That's just my opinion. I don't know where you
Yeah.
come out with this. It's not. I'm not
Well,
trying to take.
I guess you think, okay, first of all, I mean, Jeff and Stan are relatively new, and Knobloch relatively new to the organization. They don't go back 9 years like
Yeah.
other people would with the kid. Look, I think you as a GM, you try to be as honest as you can with the players. You try to be, but you know what? I think back, and I've said this a few times. I wouldn't be afraid to have a beer with anybody or meet any player that ever played for me or I managed. But that doesn't mean that they like me.
Yes. Yeah.
That doesn't mean they'd want to have a beer with me, because I'm guaranteed there's some guys that, I think of Sean Pronger. I mean, I sent him back and forth 10 times up and down to the minors, and he talked about it in his book. I was one of the most honest GMs he ever played for, but that doesn't mean he likes me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes the job is so challenging, and there's so many major issues. A depth guy can slip through the cracks, and maybe you don't treat them the way they deserve to be treated because you've got your mind on so many other aspects. So I would never, I mean, I don't know what happened. I don't know what the rationale was for him talking out or what they did wrong, but I know that every day there's an issue when you're a GM. Every day, and it's fire after fires, or you're putting out fires nonstop. So I don't know the situation, so it's hard to even comment on it.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. That's fair. So, okay, one last one on McDavid, and we'll get your thoughts on the Connor Zary deal with the Calgary Flames. Do you think at any point, this is kind of over social media more right now? I don't think anyone's reported it to know if it's true or not, but just the Twitter universe over more in Edmonton is just saying that the reason why they think McDavid's holding this up because the pressure that the NHLPA is putting on Connor in terms of getting the best deal, the fairest deal, to set the market up for the rest of the players. In your time being a general manager, has that ever been a case where you feel like maybe the PA was coaching and helping a process of an extension, of a signing for the players? Or what's your take on that?
Yeah, look, it was a lot more. I found in the good now era, it was a lot more, where there was a ton of communication. I would still say it's important to the PA. It's important to them. It's important to get those comparables and to make sure their superstars are paid the most they can possibly get. I remember doing a contract with Gord Kirk, who was Nash's agent at the time. And, it was a first overall deal. And, the bottom line was they wanted more than Kovalchuk got the year before. They wanted a contract to be more than Kovalchuk's. And that was the number one negotiating thing was we've got to come out of this. And Kovalchuk, first overall, had signed in Atlanta the year before. And they had to get, they wanted more money, than he got. And that was it was pretty obvious throughout the whole negotiation. And I don't know whether I gave him $1,000 more than Kovalchuk got or $100 more, but he got more, Yeah. And that was a driving force behind it. I can't say that I blame the PA for trying to get the most they can for these guys. It's but I don't know if that's a driving force. Look, we've heard that throughout the Sid Crosby career, where he settled for less to make it. We've heard it. Connor's taken less to make so they have a chance to win. Connor is going to do what he thinks is best for himself, number one, and for the team.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of guys do it. So it's hard to say. I mean, how much of a haircut should you take to help the team? In fairness to Connor McDavid, how much of a haircut should he take? Is he the only contract that's causing them not to be a contender? I dare say he's not the only contract they got that they'd like to have a do-over on, you know?
Correct.
So you got to look at the big picture there. I think Connor's going to do I think he's enough of a leader that he cares about the Oilers. I really believe that. And that's with me not really knowing him.
Yeah.
I would say that's front of mind with him, what's best for the organization, but also it's got to be what's best for him.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree with that. I think eventually the deal gets done. To wrap a bow on that, I think the deal gets done. I agree with John Shannon. I know Elliot Friedman is saying it now. I don't think the deal gets done before October 8th, but it can be proven wrong. Yeah. And I only say that more is when he speaks, he's more open, he's more honest. And his last comments on Friday just pretty much say there is no rush. And, and it, like someone said to me the other day too, he has a deal. He's going to honor it. He could go out, score 150 points, win a Conn Smythe, win a Conn Stanley Cup. Then what does that contract look like after that? Is that 20 million? Is that 22 million? Who knows?
Exactly.
We'll see where all that goes.
What if he doesn't sign, he loses in the first round?
100%. There's a possibility of that too. There's no guarantee that they're going to get back to the Stanley Cup final, right?
No, getting to the finals 2 years in a row is really, really tough. I mean, Florida doing what they've done is unheard of. It's funny how things turn out. It's like I was chuckling the other day. Bobrovsky, they were getting ripped about the Bobrovsky contract in Florida for the first 2 years of that deal. What a joke it was, and how much he was overpaid. All of a sudden, now people are loving the deal. So things change.
Yeah,
and Connor. I don't know. I wish I like I said, I don't know him, but he certainly sounds like a thorough, thoughtful type of guy. And he's got to do what's best for himself and his family. And he's also, don't kid yourself, he's also thinking of the Oilers.
Yeah, 100%. All right, one last question before we get you out. On Friday, Connor Zary, the deal got announced on Saturday by the organization, but the Flames and Zary come to agreement on a 3-year deal at $3.775. The future is a bit bright on him for sure. Health is a big thing. Can he stay healthy? But what have you thought? What do you think of that deal? And then what do you think that Craig Conroy's been able to do going into his third year as general manager with the Calgary Flames?
Well, I know there was excitement on the deal to get them done, and they were excited. They like what they've done over the summer. I don't think anything was too big, but they're in a pretty good position in their rebuild. They feel good about it. I'm not sure where the defenseman ends up or what happens with him. Pretty important deal coming along there. I'm more concerned about what happens with him versus what happens with Zary. I think Connor Zary's a good player, but he's certainly not. He's not as important as a defenseman, that's for sure.
Correct.
But look, they look. Craig sort of. He's a bit of an old school GM there that I think he spends a lot of time thinking about chemistry. I think his coach spends a lot of time thinking about chemistry. And I like the way they're moving along as a franchise, I look at them and I look at Montreal and I look at Ottawa. There's some really interesting Columbus look like they're ready to take a step. There's some really interesting sort of franchises that have been in the throes of a rebuild for a long time. And look, 2 or 3 of them look like they're making great strides, and 2 or 3 of them look like they're stuck in mud. And Calgary is a team that looks like they're, moving in a good direction.
Yeah, very well said, Mac. Appreciate the time and appreciate everything you've done. Obviously, a tough weekend in Ken Dryden's passing. I know that's a guy that you would have had some great memories with and some great conversations with along your time. Is there one that kind of sticks out on remembering the legacy and the man and the great hockey person that Ken Dryden was too?
It's funny, when I woke up the other morning and saw it, I was in shock. And like Jill said to me, she said, this has really bothered you, and I said, yeah, it sort of caught me up. Usually you hear that people aren't well, they're sick, but out of the blue, he's always a guy that I've really admired from, reading his book, the game and how thoughtfully, listen to him talking concussions. I've always enjoyed his interviews. They're long. They're like mine. They're long, but his are more interesting, because it's a very thoughtful conversation that he always comes up with. And I was playing for the Montreal Junior Canadiens when he came into the NHL, and I'm thinking, wow. I mean, I was there for Lafleur's first year and some of those guys, and
Yeah.
watching them. I didn't know him other than to say hello. I used to meet him at Board of Governor meetings and GM meetings when he was president of the Leafs, and obviously we had some conversations. But it really sort of caught me off guard because I'd never heard anything about the illness. But I read about his career, like who can, I mean, we talked Bobby Orr and Lafleur and all the greatest players in the Crosby, but who wins 6 Stanley Cups in 8 years, and who wins a Stanley Cup and wins the whatever Vezina Conn Smythe and retires the same year? Like, it was bizarre. At 30 years of age, he was his own man. He wanted to finish his law degree, and he was his own man. And I'll never forget when he come up from Cornell and he won the Stanley Cup. I mean, it was bizarre. And the amazing thing, and I had it in draft day, was Ken Dryden was drafted by the Boston Bruins in the draft, in the secretive draft where nobody knew. Mm-hmm. And Boston traded him 2 days after the draft for 2 players that never played a game in the league. And what he did to the Boston Bruins, and Ken didn't know he was drafted by Boston for, I think, 10 years after.
Wow.
Because it was a secret draft. So I'm thinking, how bizarre is this? And the career he had, when the Bruins traded him 2 days after the draft or whatever it was, just crazy, So anyway, quite a career, and he's quite a gentleman. And, you read about what he accomplished in his life. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. He'll be remembered forever, and obviously Hockey Hall of Famer too. So thoughts and prayers with the family, and what a player, what a legacy he left behind, and amazing. Mac, enjoy the rest of the week. And, thanks for joining us. Hopefully, it's a good week for you and Jill, and get some good visiting time in. We'll be stay in touch, and all the best to you guys.
So. Okay, bud. All the best.